I arrived at the church in my black dress, my eyes already swollen from crying. Gerald was gone. My husband of 38 years was inside that building, and I just needed to say goodbye. But as I reached for the door, my son Bradley stepped in front of me. His face was cold, unfamiliar. "You're not welcome here," he said. Samantha appeared beside him. "You'll cause a scene." Melissa wouldn't even look at me. I begged them. I just wanted to see my husband one last time. Bradley motioned to security, and 2 men took my arms and escorted me away while everyone watched. I sat in my car in the parking lot, tears streaming down my face as I watched people file into the church. The organ music drifted through the walls. I could hear it from where I sat, alone, banned from my own husband's funeral. I couldn't understand it. What had I done to deserve this? My mind kept going back to the last 6 months. Gerald had been diagnosed with heart disease in April. The prognosis wasn't good, but the doctors said we had time. Maybe a year, maybe 2 if we were lucky. I'd prepared myself to be his caregiver, to spend every remaining moment with him. But then, the children suddenly became involved in ways they never had before. Bradley moved back into our house, claiming he wanted to help with his father's care. At first, I was grateful. Our son had been distant for years, focused on his own life and career. Having him home felt like a blessing during such a difficult time, but slowly things started to change. Gerald began declining faster than the doctors expected. Much faster. He became confused, disoriented. Sometimes he didn't recognize me. I thought it was the disease progressing, but now, sitting in that parking lot, watching strangers say goodbye to my husband while I was locked out, I wondered if there was more to it. The children had insisted on managing Gerald's medications. They said I was too emotional, too stressed to keep track of everything. I'd let them take over because I trusted them. They were our children. Why wouldn't I trust them? But Gerald had changed in those final weeks. He'd look at me with fear in his eyes sometimes, like he wanted to tell me something, but couldn't find the words. Other times, he seemed heavily sedated, barely able to keep his eyes open. The children said it was necessary for his pain management. I wiped my eyes and started the car. I couldn't stay here, watching people mourn my husband while I was treated like a stranger. I drove home, or what used to be home. When I pulled into the driveway, I immediately knew something was wrong. I tried my key in the lock. It didn't work. They'd changed the locks. I stood there, staring at the door of the house I'd lived in for 38 years, unable to get inside. Through the front window, I could see movement. They were inside. My children were inside my house, going through things. I knocked on the door. Bradley answered but didn't open it all the way. He blocked the entrance with his body. Behind him, I could see Samantha and Melissa packing boxes. "You can't come in," Bradley said flatly. "This is my house," I said, my voice shaking. "Bradley, what's going on?" "Actually, it's not your house," Samantha called from inside. She walked to the door, her face hard. The house was in Dad's name only, and Dad changed his will 3 months ago. The words hit me like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" "Dad cut you out," Melissa said quietly, still not meeting my eyes. "He left everything to us." I stared at my 3 children, trying to find some hint of the people I'd raised. That's not possible. Gerald would never do that. We were married for 38 years. Bradley's face twisted into something ugly. "Maybe he finally saw the truth about you." "The truth about me?" "What truth?" "That you were only after his money," Samantha said coldly. I actually laughed. It was such an absurd statement. After his money? I worked right alongside your father building his practice. I managed the office for 20 years. I never cared about money. I cared about him. Through the window behind them, I noticed something. Pill bottles on the kitchen counter. Lots of them. Gerald's medications. I pulled out my phone and quickly snapped photos through the window before they could stop me. "You need to leave," Bradley said. He started to close the door. "Wait. I need to know what happened. Why would Gerald change his will? Why would you keep me from his funeral?" Dad's assets total nearly $4 million, Bradley said, and there was something triumphant in his voice. And you're not getting a penny of it. I don't care about the money, I said desperately. I care about understanding what happened to my husband. If you don't leave right now, we're calling the police, Samantha said. They closed the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, then walked slowly back to my car. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I looked at the photos I'd taken of the pill bottles. Something about them bothered me. The dates on the labels, the quantities. Some of those medications shouldn't be taken together. As I sat in my car, trying to process everything, my neighbor, Mr. Hoffman, approached. He was 73, had lived next door for 15 years. He looked worried. Easter, he said quietly, glancing back at the house. I'm glad you're all right. I was concerned. Mr. Hoffman, do you know what's going on? He hesitated, then leaned closer. I saw Bradley coming and going at odd hours these past few weeks, always carrying bags from the pharmacy. Different pharmacies, I noticed. And at night, sometimes I'd hear Gerald crying out. It sounded like pain. I thought it was just the illness, but there was something about the way Bradley would show up right after. My blood went cold. What are you saying? I'm not saying anything for certain, Mr. Hoffman said carefully. But Gerald seemed heavily drugged toward the end, couldn't speak clearly, and Bradley was very controlling about who could visit. Turned away some of Gerald's oldest friends, said his father was too ill for visitors. He paused. I thought you should know. He walked away quickly, afraid of being seen talking to me. I sat in my car, looking at my phone, at those pictures of pill bottles. My mind was racing. Could my children have done something to their own father? Could they have deliberately harmed him? My phone buzzed. A text from Bradley. Will, reading is next Tuesday. Don't bother showing up. This meeting's only for heirs. I checked into a motel on the edge of town. It was cheap, dingy, but it was all I could afford. I had $200 in cash in my purse. That was it. All our credit cards were joint accounts, and I discovered they'd been frozen. My own children had cut me off completely. I was effectively homeless with almost no money. The next morning, I called Gerald's primary physician, Dr. Patterson. I'd known him for years. He and Gerald had played golf together every month. When I explained what had happened, his voice became grave. Easter, I need to be careful about what I say due to patient confidentiality, but I can tell you this. I was very concerned about Gerald's care in his final months. What do you mean? His prescriptions were changed multiple times. Not by me. Bradley brought Gerald to other doctors, told them I was missing things, not being aggressive enough with treatment. Some of the medications Gerald was prescribed, when combined with his heart medication, could cause severe confusion and organ damage. My worst fears were being confirmed. Did you try to intervene? I wanted to hospitalize Gerald. I thought he needed to be in a controlled environment where we could properly monitor his medications. But Bradley and your daughters refused. They said they could care for him at home. Dr. Patterson's voice dropped. Easter, between you and me, Gerald's decline was not consistent with his original diagnosis. It was much more rapid, and some of his symptoms were not typical of heart disease. After I hung up, I sat on the motel bed, shaking. I needed evidence, concrete proof of what they'd done. I drove to Gerald's medical practice, the one he'd built over 30 years. His partner, Dr. Raymond Wilkins, was in his office. When he saw me, his face went pale. Easter, I'm so sorry, he said. I should have called you, but Bradley said you were too grief-stricken to be contacted. Raymond, I need to know what happened with the practice. He closed his office door and pulled out a file. Bradley had Gerald sign papers dissolving our partnership. It happened about 2 months ago. Gerald seemed very confused during the signing. He kept asking where you were. I thought it was strange, but Bradley said you knew about it, that it was all part of estate planning. He showed me the documents. Gerald's signature looked shaky, wrong. Bradley transferred substantial funds out of the practice accounts. Nearly $800,000 moved into accounts in his and your daughter's names. Easter, I thought you knew about all this. I thought it was legitimate estate planning. When you didn't object, I assumed it was all above board. I knew nothing about this, I said. Raymond, I think my children poisoned my husband. His face went gray. My God, do you have proof? I'm gathering it. Can you make copies of these financial documents for me? He did, his hands shaking as he worked the copier. If there's anything I can do to help, anything at all, please let me know. Gerald was my friend. If someone hurt him, they need to pay for it. I left the practice with a folder full of financial records showing systematic theft. But I needed more. I needed to prove what they'd done to Gerald himself. My best friend, Linda, finally returned my calls that afternoon. We'd been friends for 40 years. She sounded nervous. Easter, I'm sorry I haven't called back sooner. Your children contacted me. They said you were having a breakdown. Linda, I'm not having a breakdown. They're lying. They seemed very convincing. Bradley came to our house. He was crying, said you'd been making wild accusations, that you were refusing to take medication for your mental health. And you believed him? I couldn't keep the hurt out of my voice. Easter, I didn't know what to believe. They're your children. Why would they lie? She paused. Samantha came to my book club. She told everyone you'd been financially abusing Gerald for years, said they were protecting him. She had documents, Easter. Bank statements showing large withdrawals. Withdrawals they made, I said. Linda, they killed him. They poisoned him to get his money. There was a long silence. Easter, you hear how that sounds, don't you? I have proof. I have medical records, financial documents, witness statements. Then take it to the police. I wanted to. But I knew how it would look. A grief-stricken widow making accusations against her own children. The same children who were telling everyone I was mentally unstable. I needed ironclad evidence first. I drove to the county clerk's office. Public records showed that Gerald had signed a new will 3 months ago. I requested to see the signing video. California law requires that when elderly or potentially incapacitated individuals sign legal documents, the signing must be recorded. The clerk loaded the video on her computer screen. What I saw made my stomach turn. Gerald sat at a table, barely able to hold his head up. His eyes were unfocused. The pen shook in his hand. And off camera, I could hear Bradley's voice, feeding him lines. Just sign here, Dad. That's right. Now initial here. Good. Gerald's voice, slurred and confused. Where's Easter? I want Easter. Bradley's voice. She's waiting outside, Dad. You'll see her soon. Just finish signing. I want to talk to Easter first. Where is she? Sign the document first. Then you can see her. The notary looked uncomfortable but proceeded with the signing. Gerald could barely scratch out his signature. This wasn't a man of sound mind. This was a man who'd been drugged into compliance. I copied the video to a USB drive, my hands trembling with rage and grief. This was my evidence. This proved everything. Gerald hadn't wanted to sign that will. He'd been coerced. As I left the courthouse, a police car pulled up. Officer Brennan stepped out. Ma'am, I need to speak with you. What's this about? We received a call from the courthouse staff. They said a disturbed woman was harassing them about sealed documents. I wasn't harassing anyone. I requested public records I'm entitled to see. Ma'am, can I see some identification? I showed him my driver's license. He radioed it in, and I saw his expression change. Easter Hutchins? Yes. Ma'am, I need you to stay right here. A black SUV pulled up. My heart sank. Bradley got out, with Samantha beside him. They walked toward me with expressions of concern that looked practiced, fake. Officer, thank you for calling us, Bradley said. Our mother has been having episodes. We're very worried about her. I'm not having episodes, I said. Officer, they're lying to you. Bradley pulled papers from a folder. We filed a restraining order this morning. Our mother has been stalking and threatening us. We have evidence. He showed Officer Brennan his phone. Videos of me approaching the house, standing outside. Text messages I'd sent asking to talk. All of it taken out of context and edited to make me look unhinged. "Ma'am, is this you in these videos?" Officer Brennan asked. "Yes, but I wasn't stalking them. That's my house. I just wanted to understand what happened to my husband." Samantha spoke up, her voice trembling convincingly. "Officer, our mother has always had mental health issues. Our father protected her, managed her medications. Now that he's gone, she's not taking care of herself. We're just trying to help her." Officer Brennan looked at me with pity. "Ma'am, according to this restraining order, you need to stay at least 500 feet away from your children. You cannot contact them, you cannot attend any legal proceedings involving them, and you cannot approach their residences." "Their residences? That's my house." "According to this deed, the house belongs to Bradley Hutchins," the officer said, showing me the document. They'd already transferred the deed. How had they done it so fast? Gerald had only been dead for 5 days. Bradley leaned close as the officer walked back to his car to file paperwork. "You should have just taken the money I offered you and left town quietly, but you had to make this difficult. Now you've forced our hand." "What money? You never offered me anything." He smiled coldly. "That's not what the certified letter says. The one I sent to your lawyer 3 weeks ago offering you $50,000 as a settlement, the one you refused. I never received any letter. I don't even have a lawyer. That's not what the postal records show." I realized then how carefully they'd planned this. Every step had been calculated months in advance. They'd built a paper trail that made me look like I'd refused reasonable offers, that made me look unstable, that justified everything they were doing. Officer Brennan came back. "Ma'am, I need to warn you that violating this restraining order will result in immediate arrest. Do you understand?" "I understand." As Bradley and Samantha drove away, Bradley rolled down his window. He was smiling. They'd won, and he knew it. I spent the next day trying to find a lawyer who would take my case. I called 12 different law offices. Most hung up as soon as I explained the situation. Others listened politely, then said they couldn't help me. Without money, I had no leverage. Free legal aid was overwhelmed with cases and couldn't see me for weeks. Finally, a young public defender named Amanda Chen agreed to look at my evidence. She was 29, fresh out of law school, working for the county public defender's office. She met me at a coffee shop and I showed her everything. The photos of the pill bottles, the USB drive with the will signing video, Dr. Wilkins's financial documents, Mr. Hoffman's statement. Amanda watched the video twice, her expression growing darker. "This is elder abuse. This is financial exploitation. Easter, this might even be murder." For the first time in days, I felt hope. "Can you help me? I'm going to file an emergency motion to freeze Gerald's estate. We'll get a court-appointed investigator to look into this. The will signing video alone should be enough to invalidate that new will." "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet. Your children have resources, and they've clearly been planning this. They'll fight back hard. But the evidence is strong. We have a real chance." I left that meeting feeling like maybe, just maybe, justice was possible. That hope lasted exactly 12 hours. Amanda called me the next morning. Her voice was shaking. "Easter, we have a problem. A big problem." "What happened?" "Bradley's legal team filed a countersuit this morning. They're accusing you of elder abuse. They claim you had power of attorney over Gerald and used it to empty his accounts repeatedly over the past 10 years. They have bank statements, witness testimonies, everything." "That's not true. I never had power of attorney." "They have a document with your signature granting you power of attorney. It's dated 12 years ago. I never signed that. It's forged." "Easter, there's more. They've hired a psychiatrist who evaluated you. Or claims to, Dr. Marcus Vance. He submitted a report saying you show clear signs of delusional disorder, paranoid type. He says you've been making false accusations against your family members, exhibiting erratic behavior, and refusing treatment. I've never met Dr. Marcus Vance. How could he evaluate me? He claims he observed you at the courthouse, that your behavior there was consistent with psychiatric disturbance. Easter, I'm sorry, but this changes everything. The judge wants you to undergo a psychiatric evaluation before we can proceed. That's a trap. They'll use it to discredit me. If you refuse, it'll look like you have something to hide. You have to do this. The evaluation was scheduled for the next day. I barely slept that night. I knew what was happening. They were building a case that I was mentally ill, that none of my accusations could be trusted. Dr. Vance's office was in an expensive building downtown. He was a man in his 50s, professionally dressed, with cold eyes. He asked me questions for 2 hours, and I could feel him twisting everything I said. Tell me about your relationship with your children. We were close. At least, I thought we were. Until Gerald got sick. And you believe your children poisoned your husband? I have evidence that they gave him medications that caused his death. Where did you get this evidence? From his doctors? From financial records? From video of the will signing? And you don't think it's possible that you're misinterpreting normal end-of-life care? Normal end-of-life care doesn't include giving someone medication combinations that cause organ failure. He wrote in his notes. I could see it. Paranoid ideation regarding family members. Elaborate conspiracy theories. Resistant to alternative explanations. When I tried to show emotion talking about Gerald, he wrote, unstable affect. When I stayed calm, he wrote, flat emotional response, dissociation from grief. There was no winning. Every answer, every reaction, was twisted to fit his predetermined conclusion. Do you hear voices, Easter? No. Have you ever felt like people were watching you? Only since my children started following me and filming me without my knowledge. More notes. Feelings of persecution. Believes she's under surveillance. I left that evaluation knowing I'd been set up. 2 days later, Amanda called with the report. Dr. Vance had diagnosed me with delusional disorder and recommended immediate psychiatric intervention. But the worst was yet to come. That evening, I returned to my motel to find my room had been cleared out. The manager, a tired woman in her 60s, looked apologetic. Your son came by. He paid your bill and said he was taking your things to keep them safe. He was very concerned about you. Which son? What did he look like? Tall, brown hair, very polite. He tipped me $50. Bradley. Of course it was Bradley. I ran to my room. Everything was gone. My clothes, my toiletries, and worst of all, my laptop. My laptop had backup copies of all my evidence. The financial records, the medical files, everything. I still had my phone and the USB drive. I'd kept the USB drive with me at all times, hidden in my bra. It was the only evidence I had left. I called Amanda in a panic. She tried to reassure me, but I could hear the concern in her voice. We still have the USB drive. That's the most important piece of evidence. But, Easter, you need to be careful. They're clearly tracking your movements somehow. I looked at my phone. Of course. They'd put tracking software on it. When I'd briefly left it at the house that first day, they must have installed something. I factory reset the phone immediately, but the damage was done. They knew where I was staying, where I'd been. Over the next few days, my life fell apart piece by piece. I started seeing news coverage. Local news had picked up the story, but not the story I'd wanted to tell. Woman accused of abusing dying husband now claims children are conspirators. The reporter interviewed Bradley outside the courthouse. He looked grief-stricken, a performance worthy of an award. Our mother has always had mental health challenges. Our father did his best to protect her, to keep her stable. But after his death, she's spiraled. We're trying to get her the help she needs, but she keeps refusing treatment. Samantha appeared too, crying on cue. We have documentation of Mom's abuse going back years. Dad was afraid of her sometimes. He just wanted peace in his final months, but she wouldn't leave him alone. We had to step in to protect him. They showed text messages I'd sent to Gerald during his illness, asking about his medications, asking why I couldn't be more involved in his care. Taken out of context, they looked controlling, demanding. They showed bank records with my name on withdrawals, never mentioning that those were withdrawals I'd made for household expenses with Gerald's full knowledge and approval. The story painted me as a controlling, potentially abusive wife who'd drained her husband's accounts and was now lashing out at her innocent children. One by one, my friends stopped calling. Linda sent me a text. "Easter, please get help. We all love you, but you're scaring people." I tried calling other friends. Most didn't answer. The ones who did sounded uncomfortable, made excuses to get off the phone quickly. I was completely alone. Then Amanda called with the worst news yet. "Easter, the judge has reviewed Dr. Vance's evaluation. Combined with the restraining order, the evidence Bradley's team has presented, and your behavior at the courthouse, the judge is considering an emergency guardianship." What does that mean? It means Bradley could be appointed as your legal guardian. He'd have control over your medical care, your finances, all your legal decisions. He's trying to have me declared incompetent. Yes, Amanda, if that happens, it's over. He'll have me locked up somewhere. I'll never be able to fight back. I know. The hearing is in 3 days. We need to fight this hard. But how do you fight when the entire system has been turned against you? When every piece of evidence you present is dismissed as the paranoid ravings of a mentally ill woman? When your own children stand in court, tears streaming down their faces, begging the judge to help their poor, disturbed mother? I sat in that dingy motel room, looking at the USB drive, the last piece of evidence I had. The will reading was in 5 days. I was banned from attending by the restraining order. Even if I could go, who would believe me? I thought about Gerald, about the man I'd loved for 38 years, about how his own children had poisoned him, drugged him, stolen from him, and then erased his wife from his life as he lay dying. I couldn't let them win. I wouldn't let them win. But I was out of options, out of money, out of allies. The guardianship hearing was in 3 days. If I lost that, it was over. I needed a miracle. The miracle didn't come. The guardianship hearing was a nightmare. Bradley's lawyers had everything prepared. They presented Dr. Vance's evaluation, the police reports from the restraining order, edited videos of me behaving erratically, and testimony from people I barely knew, claiming I'd been acting strange for months. Amanda fought hard, but we were outgunned. Bradley's legal team was expensive and experienced. They made me sound dangerous, delusional, a threat to myself and others. The judge was sympathetic but firm. "Mrs. Hutchins, I'm granting a temporary emergency guardianship to your son Bradley for a period of 30 days, during which time you'll undergo psychiatric evaluation and treatment. This is for your own protection." Just like that, I lost control of my own life. Bradley was now legally responsible for my medical care, my finances, any legal decisions I might need to make, and his first decision was to have me committed. I spent that night in my car, parked behind a grocery store. I had nowhere else to go. I was down to my last $40. My phone was nearly dead. I'd lost everything. In the morning, I charged my phone at a public library. I needed to find Harold Finch, the estate lawyer handling Gerald's will. He'd been Gerald's friend for 30 years. If I could just get the evidence to him before the will reading, maybe he'd listen. Maybe he'd see the truth. But I couldn't mail it. Bradley was somehow intercepting my mail, tracking my movements. I'd have to hand-deliver it. The problem was the restraining order. The will reading was in 3 days, and I was banned from attending. If I showed up, I'd be arrested immediately. I had to risk it. It was my only chance. I spent the next 2 days planning. I had to be smart, careful. I couldn't give Bradley any opportunity to stop me. On the day before the will reading, I went to the post office to buy an envelope. I was addressing it to Harold Finch's office when I saw him. Bradley. He was checking his post office box across the room. Our eyes met. His face registered shock, then anger. I grabbed my envelope and ran. I heard him shouting behind me, calling someone on his phone. I made it to my car, hands shaking as I tried to get the key in the ignition. A black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Samantha and Melissa. They'd been tracking my phone again. After I'd reset it, I thought I was safe, but they must have put tracking software on my car somehow. Or maybe they'd just been watching Harold's office, knowing I'd eventually try to contact him. I peeled out of the parking lot, my old car groaning in protest. The SUV followed. I drove frantically through downtown streets, taking random turns, trying to lose them. My car wasn't built for this. It was 12 years old, barely maintained. The SUV was new, powerful, gaining on me. I made a desperate turn onto a side street. The road was slick from morning rain. My tires skidded. I tried to correct, but the car spun. I hit a telephone pole with a sickening crunch of metal. The airbag deployed, hitting me in the face. I sat there, dazed, tasting blood in my mouth. My car was smoking, the front end crumpled, but I was alive. Bradley reached my car first. He yanked the door open. "Give me the drive, Mother." I shook my head, trying to clear the ringing in my ears. No. He started searching my pockets, my purse. I fought him weakly, but I was hurt, disoriented. He found my purse, dumped its contents on the ground, found my phone, the envelope, but not the USB drive. I'd hidden it in my shoe this time, learning from the last time they'd searched me. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Bradley stepped back, his expression changing to one of concern. By the time the police arrived, he looked like a worried son standing over his injured mother. Officer Brennan was first on scene. He recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Hutchins, you're lucky you're not seriously hurt. Can you tell me what happened?" "I was driving, and my son followed me. I tried to get away and crashed." Bradley interrupted smoothly. "Officer, I wasn't following her. I was trying to catch up to her to make sure she was okay. My mother walked away from her psychiatric care facility this morning. We've been worried sick." "What psychiatric facility?" "Meadowbrook. She was admitted for evaluation this morning after the guardianship hearing yesterday, but she left without authorization." It was a lie. I'd never been to Meadowbrook. But Bradley had papers. He always had papers. He showed Officer Brennan documents, admission papers, signed by him as my guardian, showing I'd been admitted that morning for psychiatric evaluation. "Mrs. Hutchins, is this true? Did you leave a treatment facility?" "I was never at a treatment facility. I've been living in my car. Officer, please. My children poisoned my husband. I have evidence. I just need to get it to the estate lawyer." Even to my own ears, I sounded desperate, unhinged. Officer Brennan looked at me with pity. "Ma'am, I think you need medical attention." An ambulance arrived. Paramedics checked me over. Mild concussion, whiplash, bruised ribs. Nothing serious, but they wanted to transport me to the hospital for observation. Bradley rode with me. As soon as we were alone in the ambulance, his mask dropped. "You should have just taken the 50,000 and left town. I offered you an out, but you had to fight. You had to play detective. Now look at you. You're about to spend the rest of your life in a psychiatric facility. People will find out the truth." "No, they won't. Because everyone already thinks you're crazy. And once you're officially declared incompetent, anything you say will be dismissed as the ravings of a mentally ill woman." He leaned close. "You've lost, Mother. You've lost everything. And tomorrow, while you're locked up in Meadowbrook, we're going to read Dad's will and inherit everything he spent his life building. And there's nothing you can do about it." At the hospital, they treated my injuries, but I wasn't released. Instead, Bradley signed papers having me transferred directly to Meadowbrook Psychiatric Facility for mandatory evaluation and treatment under the emergency guardianship order. I was taken by ambulance to Meadowbrook. It was a grim place, understaffed, with peeling paint and locked doors. They processed me like a prisoner, took my clothes, gave me hospital scrubs, took my belongings, including my shoes. A nurse named Patricia sorted through my things, cataloging everything. She found the USB drive hidden in my shoe. "What's this?" "It's evidence. Evidence that my children killed my husband. Please, I need to keep it. I need to get it to a lawyer." She looked at me with sympathy. She'd probably heard similar stories from dozens of patients. "I'm sorry, honey. No personal electronics allowed. Hospital policy. It'll be safe in storage. You'll get it back when you're discharged." She locked it in a cabinet in the staff office. I watched her do it, memorizing which cabinet, which shelf. That USB drive was my last hope. Without it, I had nothing. They put me in a ward with 6 other women, gave me medication, which I pretended to swallow but hid in my cheek, spitting out later in the bathroom. I needed to stay clear-headed. The will reading was in 2 days. I was locked in a psychiatric facility, my evidence confiscated, my credibility destroyed. Bradley had won. I lay in the hospital bed that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the other patients. One woman sobbed quietly. Another talked to herself. A third stared at the wall in silence. This was where I'd spend the rest of my life if I didn't find a way out. Bradley would make sure of that. Once the will was read and he officially inherited everything, he'd make sure I stayed here permanently. Out of sight, out of mind, no longer a threat. But then I remembered something Patricia had said. "You'll get it back when you're discharged. Everything gets returned when you're discharged." I just had to convince them to discharge me before the will reading. But how do you prove you're sane when everyone has already decided you're not? I spent the next day being the perfect patient. Compliant, calm, rational. When they offered me medication, I took it without complaint, then discreetly spit it out later. I needed them to think I was responding to treatment. The psychiatrist on duty was different from Dr. Vance. Dr. Martinez was younger, seemed less jaded. During my evaluation, I was careful with my words. "I think I was overwhelmed by grief," I told him. "My husband died, and I couldn't process it. I see that now. Tell me about your feelings toward your children." I was angry. I felt excluded from the funeral planning, from his final days. But I understand they were trying to protect me. I wasn't in a good place. It killed me to say these things, to pretend that my children's actions were justified, but I had to get out. "What about your accusations regarding your husband's death?" I think grief made me paranoid. I was looking for someone to blame. It's easier to be angry than sad. I paused, forced myself to look sad rather than angry. I miss him so much. I just wanted the pain to stop, and accusing my children gave me something to focus on other than the emptiness. Dr. Martinez made notes. The medications seem to be helping. They are. I feel clearer now, more like myself. I'm going to recommend continued treatment, but I don't see a need for inpatient care at this level. We might be able to step you down to outpatient treatment. Hope flared in my chest. When? Let me consult with the attending physician. After he left, I waited. Every hour that passed was an hour closer to the will reading. It was tomorrow at 10 in the morning. I had to get out tonight. That evening, Patricia came by to check on me. I'd been friendly to her, polite, building rapport. "You seem better," she said kindly. "I am. Dr. Martinez thinks I might be discharged soon." "That's good. You don't belong here, honey. I can tell." "Patricia, can I ask you something? If I'm discharged, I get all my belongings back, right? Including that USB drive?" "Of course. Everything gets returned." She lowered her voice. "Between you and me, I've seen families abuse guardianship laws before. I've seen people get stuck in places like this for years because someone has financial reasons to keep them here. If you're really okay, fight to get out. Don't let them trap you." Her words gave me strength. She'd seen through Bradley's act, at least partially. At 8 that evening, a different doctor came to my room. Dr. Chen. He was filling in for the regular psychiatrist and was reviewing all the charts. He sat down with my file, reading through everything. Dr. Vance's evaluation, Dr. Martinez's notes, Bradley's statements, the police reports. "Mrs. Hutchins, I have some questions." My heart sank. Was this another trap? But Dr. Chen's questions were different. "Your son says you have a long history of mental illness, but I don't see any psychiatric treatment in your medical records. No hospitalizations, No medications. Nothing. That's because I don't have a history of mental illness. Dr. Vance diagnosed you with delusional disorder based on one observation at a courthouse. Doctor, Martinez says you're responding remarkably well to medication, showing complete resolution of symptoms in less than 48 hours. That's not consistent with delusional disorder. I held my breath. Your son lists symptoms going back months, but your primary care physician's notes don't mention anything. Your annual physical 3 months ago showed no concerns. No cognitive issues, no psychiatric referrals. He looked at me. Something doesn't add up here. Doctor, my children poisoned my husband. I have evidence. They've been trying to silence me by having me declared insane. He didn't dismiss me immediately. What evidence? A USB drive. It's in the staff office, in my belongings. It has video of my husband being coerced into signing a will while heavily drugged, medical records showing systematic poisoning, financial records showing theft. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. I'm going to review this drive. If what you're saying is true, you shouldn't be here. He retrieved the USB drive from the office and watched the video on his laptop right there in my room. I watched his expression change from skepticism to shock to anger. This is elder abuse, he said quietly. Will you help me? I'm ordering your immediate discharge. You should never have been admitted. This is a clear abuse of guardianship powers. He made notes in my chart. I'll file a report with the state. Your son used emergency guardianship to illegally commit you. Within an hour, I was being processed out. They returned all my belongings, including the USB drive. I clutched it like a lifeline. It was 9 in the evening. The will reading was in 13 hours. I had no car, no money, no phone that worked. But I had the evidence, and I had my freedom. Patricia slipped me $40 as I left. Take a cab, get somewhere safe. I almost cried at her kindness. Thank you, for everything. Good luck, honey. Make them pay for what they did. I took a cab downtown, to Harold Finch's office building. It didn't open until 9 in the morning. The will reading was at 10. I'd have to wait outside all night, but I'd be there when the doors opened. I spent the night in the building's lobby, dozing in a chair. Security checked on me once, but I explained I had an early appointment, and they let me stay. At 7 in the morning, people started arriving for work. At 8:30, I saw them. Bradley, Samantha, and Melissa, walking into the building. They were early for the will reading. They saw me. The shock on Bradley's face would have been comical if I wasn't so exhausted. How did you get out? I didn't answer. Just stood my ground. Samantha pulled out her phone. I'm calling the facility. You're not supposed to be out. I was legally discharged by a psychiatrist who actually examined me properly. Melissa looked away, couldn't meet my eyes. But Bradley's face was red with fury. You can't be here. You're not an heir. The will reading is for heirs only. I'm his widow. I have rights. You're under guardianship. You can't make legal decisions. You can't attend this meeting. He showed his phone to building security, who'd approached when they saw the confrontation. This woman is mentally ill. She's under my guardianship. She's not supposed to be here. The security guard looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, do you have documentation that you're allowed to be here? Before I could answer, Harold Finch arrived. He walked through the lobby, briefcase in hand, and stopped when he saw us all. What's going on here? Bradley immediately approached him. Mr. Finch, my mother is mentally ill. She's under guardianship. She has a restraining order. She cannot be at this will reading. Harold looked at the guardianship papers Bradley showed him. His face was grave. He looked at me, really looked at me. He'd known me for 30 years. He and Gerald had been friends since medical school. Easter, he said quietly. Are you all right? I've been better, Harold. Bradley interrupted. Mr. Finch, she legally cannot be here. Harold held up a hand. The will reading is in 90 minutes. Easter, your children are correct that you're not named as an heir in the will they've submitted. However, as Gerald's widow, You have the legal right to be present at any reading of his will, regardless of whether you're named in it. That's California law. Guardianship doesn't strip you of that right. Bradley's face went pale. That can't be right. I assure you, it is. Easter will be attending this reading. Samantha stepped forward. We'll sue. We'll file a complaint with the Bar Association. Harold shrugged calmly. That's your prerogative. But the reading proceeds with Easter present, or it doesn't proceed at all. They had no choice. At 9:45, we all went upstairs to Harold's conference room. Bradley, Samantha, and Melissa sat on one side of the long table. I sat alone on the other side. They looked smug, confident. I was exhausted, battered, but determined. Harold opened his briefcase and arranged papers on the table. He looked at me, and I thought I saw something in his eyes. Not pity, something else. Understanding, maybe. Or was it hope? I reached into my purse and felt the USB drive. This was it, my last chance. I had to time this perfectly. If I gave Harold the evidence too early, Bradley would find a way to discredit it. Too late, and it wouldn't matter. The clock on the wall read 9:59. Harold cleared his throat. Let's begin. Harold's voice was formal, professional. We are here for the reading of the last will and testament of Gerald Matthew Hutchins, dated March 15th of this year. I want to confirm that all interested parties are present. Bradley nodded. Yes. My sisters and I are here. My mother is here against our wishes, but you've insisted. Indeed. Harold opened a blue folder. Let me begin by reading the primary bequests of the will submitted to this office. My heart was pounding. This was the moment I'd been dreading. Hearing Gerald's estate divided among my children while I received nothing. Harold read systematically. The estate of Gerald Matthew Hutchins is valued at approximately $4.2 million, including the family residence, the medical practice building, investment accounts, and liquid assets. Bradley sat back in his chair, a small smile playing at his lips. To my son, Bradley Matthew Hutchins, I bequeath the sum of $1 million and the building housing Hutchins Medical Practice, with all associated property and assets. Samantha's smile widened. To my daughter, Samantha Louise Hutchins, I bequeath the sum of $1 million and my complete investment portfolio, including all stocks, bonds, and securities. Melissa still wouldn't look at me, but relief was visible on her face. To my daughter, Melissa Jean Hutchins, I bequeath the sum of $1 million and the family residence, with all furnishings and associated property. Bradley leaned forward. And what about the remaining assets? The remaining assets, approximately $1.2 million, are to be divided equally among the 3 children. Samantha actually smiled at me. A cold, triumphant smile. Bradley's expression was pure satisfaction. To my wife, Easter Rose Hutchins, I bequeath nothing. She is specifically excluded from this will. The words were like a knife to my heart. Even though I'd expected them, even though I knew Gerald had been coerced, hearing those words read aloud in Harold's formal tone was devastating. Bradley spoke up. That concludes the will, correct? That concludes the primary bequests, yes. Then this meeting is over. Harold held up a hand. Not quite. Before we finalize anything, I need to ask, are there any objections, questions, or additional information that should be brought to my attention? This was my moment. I stood up, reached into my purse, and pulled out the manila folder. Inside were the printed photos, the medical documents, the financial records, and the USB drive. My hands were shaking as I walked around the table to Harold. I have information you need to see. Bradley jumped up. Mr. Finch, don't look at that. She's mentally ill. She's been making wild accusations. What accusations? Harold asked calmly, taking the folder. She claims we poisoned our father. She's delusional. We have psychiatric evaluations proving it. Harold opened the folder. The first document was the toxicology report Dr. Patterson had ordered. Harold's expression changed as he read it. His jaw tightened. What is this? A toxicology report, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It shows lethal levels of medication in Gerald's system at the time of death, combinations that would cause organ failure. This is fabricated, Samantha said quickly. She made it up. It's from Dr. Patterson, I said. Gerald's primary physician for 20 years. Call him, he'll verify it. Harold set down the toxicology report and picked up the next documents. Photos of pill bottles. He examined them carefully. These show prescriptions from multiple doctors, overlapping medications. Dad was in pain, Bradley said. He needed proper pain management. His regular doctor wasn't providing it, so we took him to specialists. Specialists who prescribed medications that, when combined, would kill him, I said. Harold picked up the financial documents from Dr. Wilkins. His hands actually shook as he read them. These show unauthorized transfers of $800,000 from Gerald's practice accounts. That was estate planning, Bradley said, but his voice had lost its confidence. Our father approved those transfers. When he was being poisoned and couldn't think clearly, I said. Harold reached the USB drive. What's on this? Video of Gerald signing the will you're reading today. The will dated March 15th. Samantha went pale. You can't watch that. It's private. It's evidence required by law to be recorded, Harold said. He inserted the drive into his laptop and turned it so we could all see the screen. The video played. Gerald sitting at a table, barely able to hold his head up, his eyes unfocused, his hands shaking, the pen trembling in his grasp as he tried to sign. Bradley's voice came from off-camera. Just sign here, Dad. That's right. Now initial here. Good. Gerald's voice slurred. Where's Easter? I want Easter. She's waiting outside, Dad. You'll see her soon. Just finish signing. I want to talk to Easter first. Where is she? Sign the document first. Then you can see her. The notary's uncomfortable face filled part of the frame. Gerald could barely scratch out his signature. His hand moved like it weighed 100 pounds. The video ended. Silence filled the room. Harold closed his laptop slowly. His face had gone from professional neutrality to barely controlled anger. This man was not of sound mind when he signed this will. He was ill, Bradley said. That doesn't mean he wasn't competent. This shows coercion. He was asking for his wife and was told he could only see her after signing. That's taken out of context, Samantha said desperately. Harold pulled out more documents from the folder. Mr. Hoffman's witness statement. Timeline of pharmacy visits. Receipt for oleander extract. Oleander extract, Harold said quietly. That's a plant toxin. It mimics heart attack symptoms. The room went deadly silent. Melissa started crying. We didn't mean for him to die. We just wanted him confused enough to sign the papers. Bradley said it would just make him more compliant. We didn't know it would kill him. Shut up, Bradley shouted at his sister. Don't say another word. But Melissa couldn't stop. The guilt had been eating at her for weeks. He was our father. What did we do? What did we do? She sobbed into her hands. Harold's voice was ice. This will is invalid. It was signed under duress by a man who was being systematically poisoned by his own children. Bradley stood up. You can't prove any of this. That video doesn't prove anything. The toxicology report could be wrong. The financial transfers were legitimate. I have a legal obligation to report evidence of crimes, Harold said. What I've seen here constitutes elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and potentially murder. You're listening to a mentally ill woman, Bradley said desperately. She's under guardianship. She has no credibility. Harold reached into his own briefcase. Actually, Bradley, there's something you don't know. He pulled out another document. A different will. This, Harold said, is Gerald's actual will. The one he filed with me 8 years ago, before any of you suddenly became so interested in his finances. Bradley's face went white. What? Gerald never changed his will. The will you thought you had him sign, the one we just read, was never properly filed with this office. I have his original, legal will right here. Samantha's voice was barely a whisper. What does it say? Harold opened the document and read, I, Gerald Matthew Hutchins, being of sound mind, do hereby bequeath all my worldly possessions, property, and assets to my beloved wife, Easter Rose Hutchins, to be distributed as she sees fit. I trust her judgment completely and know she will provide for our children appropriately. The room spun. Everything. He'd left me everything. Harold continued. Gerald came to see me 4 months ago. He was confused, frightened. He said Bradley was pushing him to sign papers he didn't understand. He was worried something was wrong. He asked me to keep his original will safe, to make sure no one could change it. He said, if anything happens to me, Easter will know what to do. Tears streamed down my face. Gerald had known. Even in his confusion, even when they were poisoning him, some part of him had known something was wrong, and he'd protected me the only way he could. This is insane, Bradley said, but his voice shook. You're in on this with her. You're both trying to steal our inheritance. I'm calling the police, Harold said calmly. He picked up his phone and dialed. Detective Morrison? This is Harold Finch. I'm an estate attorney, and I need to report evidence of elder abuse, fraud, and potential murder. Yes, I'll hold. Bradley bolted for the door, but Harold had already locked it. Security was outside, alerted beforehand. Detective Morrison arrived within 20 minutes with 2 other officers. Harold handed over all the evidence, the toxicology report, the photos, the USB drive, the financial records, everything. Bradley tried to argue, to threaten, to manipulate. But watching that video, no one could deny what had happened. Gerald had been drugged, coerced, abused by his own children. Melissa was still crying, confessing everything through her sobs. The medications Bradley had researched, the plan to make Gerald confused enough to sign documents, how it had started as just wanting to secure their inheritance and had spiraled into something horrific. How none of them had meant for him to actually die. They just wanted him compliant. But Bradley had kept increasing the doses, and Gerald's heart had given out. Detective Morrison read them their rights. Bradley, Samantha, and Melissa. One by one, they were handcuffed. Bradley was shouting about lawyers, about lawsuits, about how this was all a conspiracy. Samantha had gone silent, in shock. Melissa couldn't stop apologizing to me through her tears. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this. I was weak. I'm so sorry. I couldn't speak. I just watched as my 3 children were led out in handcuffs. Harold sat down heavily in his chair. Easter, I'm so sorry. I should have seen this coming. Gerald was worried, and I should have investigated more. It's not your fault. They fooled everyone. The will is clear. Everything goes to you. The house, the practice, all of it, as Gerald intended. Gerald would be proud of you, he added quietly. You fought for him even when everyone told you to give up. Even when they tried to destroy you. You never stopped fighting for the truth. I nodded, unable to speak through my tears. I'd won. But the cost of this victory was everything. My husband was still dead. My children were going to prison. My family was destroyed. But Gerald's voice echoed in my memory. If anything happens to me, Easter will know what to do. I did know. I knew exactly what to do. 3 months later, I stood in front of the house Gerald and I had shared for 38 years. The locks had been changed back to ones I could open. I could walk through that door any time I wanted now, but it felt different. The house felt haunted, filled with ghosts of better times. The legal proceedings had moved swiftly. Bradley, Samantha, and Melissa had all been formally charged. The toxicology reports proved Gerald had been systematically poisoned. The video evidence showed coercion and elder abuse. Melissa's confession provided the timeline and details that tied everything together. Bradley was facing second-degree murder charges. He'd researched the medications, purchased the oleander extract, administered the doses. The prosecutor had evidence of internet searches on his laptop, how to induce heart failure, medications that cause confusion, undetectable poisons. Samantha had taken a plea deal, 15 years for fraud and elder abuse. She'd cooperated with the investigation, providing records of all the financial transfers, and admitting her role in manipulating Gerald's business affairs. Melissa had also pleaded guilty. 12 years for conspiracy and elder abuse. The murder charge was dropped in exchange for her testimony against Bradley. She'd written me letters from jail. Long letters, full of remorse and self-recrimination. I'd read them all, but I hadn't responded yet. I didn't know what to say. I'd spent a lot of time in therapy, trying to process everything, trying to understand how this had happened. Where had I gone wrong as a mother? How had I raised children capable of killing their own father for money? My therapist, Dr. Lisa Reynoldson, helped me see that it wasn't about my parenting, it was about choices. Bradley had made a choice, driven by greed and resentment. Samantha had chosen money over family. Melissa had chosen weakness, going along with her siblings rather than standing up for what was right. But they were still my children, and that was the hardest part to reconcile. The people who'd done this horrible thing were babies I'd held, children I'd raised, young adults I'd been proud of. Somewhere along the way, they'd become people I didn't recognize. The community had rallied around me once the truth came out. The local news covered the trial extensively. Children poisoned father for inheritance. My reputation was fully restored. Friends who'd abandoned me came back, apologizing profusely. Linda had shown up at my door 2 weeks after the arrests, crying so hard she could barely speak. "Easter, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have trusted you. I'm so sorry." I'd forgiven her because that's what Gerald would have wanted. But our friendship felt different now. Some betrayals leave scars even when they're forgiven. I inherited everything, just as Gerald had intended. $4.2 million, the house, the medical practice building, the investments, all of it. But money felt meaningless now. Gerald was gone. I'd trade every penny to have him back, to have one more day with him, to have the family I thought I had. I stood in Gerald's home office, surrounded by his medical books and files. Dr. Wilkins wanted to buy the practice building, to continue Gerald's legacy of caring for patients. It was a fair offer, generous even. But I had a different idea. I established the Gerald Hutchins Foundation. Its mission: to protect elderly people from financial abuse and exploitation, to fund legal aid for seniors fighting guardianship abuse, to train healthcare workers, lawyers, and social workers to recognize the signs of elder abuse, to support research into better protections for vulnerable adults. I put half the estate into the foundation, $2 million. Gerald had spent his entire career healing people, helping them. This was how his legacy would continue, through helping others, protecting them from the kind of abuse he'd suffered. The foundation started small, but grew quickly. We helped 73 people in the first 3 months. Elderly people trapped in abusive guardianships, seniors whose families were stealing from them, people who were being isolated, controlled, manipulated. Every person we helped felt like honoring Gerald. Every family we saved felt like making his death mean something. I sold the big house. Too many memories, both beautiful and painful. I bought a smaller place near the ocean in Mendocino County. 2 bedrooms, a small garden, a view of the water. It was peaceful there, quiet. I volunteered at the foundation 3 days a week, working directly with people who were going through what I'd gone through, fighting their own families, being called crazy, losing everything. I understood them in a way few people could. I'd been there. I'd survived it. And I could help them survive it too. Dr. Chen, the psychiatrist who discharged me from Meadowbrook, reached out 6 weeks after the trial. He'd been following the case and was horrified by how the guardianship system had been abused. "I want to help," he said. "We need better protocols, better training, ways to identify when guardianships are being used as weapons rather than protection." He joined the foundation's board. Together, we developed screening tools, training programs, and advocacy guidelines. We worked with legislators to strengthen guardianship laws, to add more oversight, to make it harder for people like Bradley to abuse the system. Slowly, painfully, I began to heal. I joined a grief support group for people who'd lost spouses, met others who understood the emptiness, the missing someone so much it physically hurt. We'd meet every Thursday evening at a community center, sharing stories, supporting each other. One woman, Ruth, had lost her husband to cancer 2 years earlier. She understood grief, but she also understood betrayal. Her daughter had stolen $50,000 from her while her husband was dying. "Family can hurt us worse than strangers," Ruth said once. "Because we trust them, we love them, and they know exactly how to destroy us." I found comfort in the support group, in being around people who didn't judge, who didn't offer empty platitudes, who just listened and understood. One afternoon, I was working at the foundation office when the receptionist told me I had a visitor. It was Patricia, the nurse from Meadowbrook. She'd heard about the foundation and wanted to volunteer. "I see it all the time," she said. "Families using the system to control elderly relatives, taking their money, isolating them, having them committed when they object. I want to help stop it." She became one of our best advocates, using her experience in psychiatric facilities to identify warning signs and connect people with resources. A year after Gerald's death, I received a letter from prison, from Samantha. Not the first letter she'd sent, but the first one that felt genuinely honest. "Mom, I've had a lot of time to think. To really think about what we did. Not just what we did to you, but what we did to Dad. He loved us. He worked his entire life to provide for us. And we killed him for money we didn't even need. I had a good job. I owned my home. I wasn't struggling. But I wanted more. I was greedy. And I destroyed everything for that greed. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just need you to know that I understand now what we did. I understand the magnitude of it. And I have to live with that for the rest of my life. Every day in here I think about Dad asking for you, asking where you were, and we kept you from him. We kept him from the person he loved most. I'll never forgive myself for that. I hope the foundation helps people. I hope Dad's death leads to something good. That's the only thing that makes any of this bearable." I cried reading that letter. Then I wrote back, "Not forgiveness, not yet. Maybe never, but acknowledgement. I received your letter. I know you're sorry. I don't know if we'll ever have a relationship again. But I hope you find peace. Gerald would want that." I visited Melissa once, 6 months into her sentence. She looked thin, worn. Prison had aged her. She could barely look at me. "Why did you come?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you're still my daughter. And I need to understand." We talked for 2 hours. She explained how Bradley had convinced them that I was trying to cut them out of the inheritance, that Gerald was losing his mental capacity, that they needed to act to protect the family assets. How it had started small, just changing some financial arrangements. Then bigger, controlling medications. By the time Melissa realized how far Bradley had gone, she was already complicit. She was afraid to stop, afraid of what would happen if she spoke up, afraid of losing her share of the inheritance. "I was weak," she said, crying. "I knew it was wrong. I knew we were hurting him. But I wanted the money. I'm a teacher. I make $43,000 a year. The thought of having $1 million, of never worrying about money again, it made me rationalize. It made me tell myself we weren't really hurting him, that he was dying anyway, that it didn't matter. But it did matter," I said quietly. I know that now." She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "Do you hate me?" I thought about that question for a long time. "I don't hate you. I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm heartbroken. But I don't hate you. You're my daughter, and I'll always love you. But I don't know if I can forgive what you did. Not yet. Maybe not ever." She nodded, accepting that. "I understand. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry." I never visited Bradley. He'd refused to see me anyway. He was still fighting the charges, still claiming he'd done nothing wrong, still insisting it was all a conspiracy against him. His trial was scheduled for next month. The prosecutor was confident of a conviction. The evidence was overwhelming. Sometimes I wondered what had happened to Bradley. What had turned him into someone capable of killing his own father? Was it something I'd done? Some failure as a mother? Or was it just choices he'd made? Person he'd become? Beyond my control? I'd never know for sure, and I'd have to find a way to live with that uncertainty. 2 years after Gerald's death, the foundation had helped over 300 people. We'd successfully fought 12 wrongful guardianships. We'd trained over 500 healthcare workers and lawyers in recognizing elder abuse. We'd lobbied for stronger legislation in 3 states. Gerald's legacy was growing, not through the money he'd left, but through the lives we were saving, the families we were protecting. I thought about him every day. His laugh, his kindness, the way he'd look at me in the morning, still sleepy, and smile like I was the best thing he'd ever seen. The way he'd held my hand during movies. The way he'd dance with me in the kitchen while dinner cooked. All those moments, gone. Stolen by our own children. But I'd made a decision early on. I wouldn't let bitterness consume the rest of my life. Bradley had stolen my husband. My children had stolen years of happiness, of growing old together. But they couldn't steal who I was. They couldn't steal my integrity, my compassion, my determination to make something good come from this tragedy. I'd spend my remaining years helping others, fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves, making sure Gerald's death meant something. On the 2nd anniversary of Gerald's death, I drove to the cemetery. His grave was under an oak tree, peaceful and quiet. I brought his favorite flowers, white roses. I did it, I told him, sitting on the grass beside his headstone. I fought for you. I made them pay for what they did. And now I'm using what you left to help others. The wind rustled through the oak leaves. I imagined it was him, telling me he was proud. The foundation helped a woman last week. Her name is Dorothy. She's 78. Her son was stealing her Social Security checks, had her declared incompetent to take control of her house. We got her a lawyer, challenged the guardianship, got her assets returned. She cried when I told her she could go home. She said she'd given up hope. I traced Gerald's name on the headstone. Gerald Matthew Hutchins, beloved husband, father, and physician. I added something, I told him. I had them add a line. It says, "His legacy lives on through the lives he touched and the people he continues to protect. Because you are still protecting people, Gerald, through the foundation, through the work we do in your name." I sat there for a long time, remembering, not just the terrible end, but all the good years. The laughter, the love, the life we'd built together. Gerald and I had 38 years together. Not enough, never enough, but they were good years. Years filled with love and partnership and building something meaningful. Our children had taken him from me, but they hadn't taken those memories. They hadn't taken what we had, and they hadn't taken my ability to honor him by helping others. I stood up, brushed grass off my pants. I'll see you again someday, love. Until then, I'll make sure your legacy is more than the money you left. It'll be the people we save, the families we protect, the truth we stand for. That's what love does. It outlasts even death. As I walked back to my car, I thought about what I'd learned from this nightmare. I'd learned that people you trust completely can betray you in unimaginable ways. That greed can corrupt even family bonds. That the legal system can be manipulated by people with resources and no conscience. But I'd also learned that truth eventually surfaces. That fighting for what's right matters, even when you're alone and everyone thinks you're crazy. That strength comes from unexpected places. That kindness exists, even in dark times. That healing is possible, even from the deepest wounds. I'd learned that justice and forgiveness aren't opposites. I could fight to hold my children accountable, and still feel compassion for them. I could acknowledge what they did and still grieve for the family we lost. I could be strong and still feel broken. Life wasn't simple stories of heroes and villains. Sometimes the villains were people you loved. Sometimes the hero was just someone who refused to give up when it would have been easier to disappear. And sometimes winning meant losing everything except your integrity. But integrity was enough. It had to be enough. I drove home to my little house by the ocean, to the life I'd built from the ruins of everything I'd lost. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't the life I'd wanted. But it was meaningful. It was purposeful. And Gerald would have been proud. That evening, I sat on my porch watching the sunset over the Pacific. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. Waves crashed against the rocks below. Seagulls called to each other. I thought about Easter and resurrection, about how I'd been named for new beginnings. My parents couldn't have known how fitting that name would be. I'd died in a way, during those terrible months. The old Easter, the one who trusted blindly, who thought family was everything, who believed love could conquer anything. She'd died. But something new had been born. Someone stronger. Someone who knew how dark the world could be but chose to bring light anyway. Someone who'd lost everything but found purpose in helping others. I raised my glass of wine toward the setting Sunday. To you, Gerald, and to everyone we're going to help, everyone we're going to save. This is your legacy. This is our love, continuing. The sun sank below the horizon, painting the world in twilight. Another day ending, another beginning tomorrow, and I would face it with strength, with purpose, with Gerald's memory guiding me forward, because that's what love does. It endures, it transforms, it outlasts even death. Now, I have a question for all of you who've listened to my story. Have you ever fought for the truth when everyone told you to give up? Have you ever had to stand alone against people you loved, knowing it would cost you everything? If you have, please share your story in the comments. You're not alone. Others need to hear that someone else survived what they're going through. And if you know someone who might be experiencing elder abuse or financial exploitation, please reach out to them. Check on your elderly neighbors. Question suspicious guardianships. Don't assume everything is fine just because family members say it is. Gerald needed someone to question what was happening. Be that person for someone else. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about resilience, justice, and the strength it takes to fight for what's right. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that truth eventually wins, that fighting back matters, that healing is possible even from the deepest betrayal. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for bearing witness to Gerald's life and death. Thank you for helping spread awareness about elder abuse. May you never stop fighting for truth. May you never lose hope, even in the darkest times. And may you always remember that love, real love, outlasts everything, even death, even betrayal, even the darkest night. Take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.